I passed the FE and PE civil exams on my first try, and in this video I'm going to give you the very simple practical steps to passing your FE civil exam on your first attempt. Hello everyone, my name is Joseph. I run this channel called Exam Prep Solutions, helping engineers pass the FE exam, whether it's their first, second, or third try, and giving you the strategies to get as quickly across that finish line and effectively as possible. So in this video, I'm going to cover my 3 main tips for helping you guys study and prepare for your FE exam. If you want my 90-day study guide, which is a free template and gives you a 3-month path to passing the FE exam, it's 100% free in the description down below. Go ahead and check it out. Number 1, do an assessment of your skills, your strengths, and your weaknesses. You need to figure out in the beginning what topics you're strong at and which ones you're weak at. The FE exam covers a lot of topics. There is a lot of material on it covering classes in college that may have been 3, 4, 5, and for some of you 10 years ago. So in that early stages, you need to get some practice problems. NCEES has some practice tests. I have practice problems. Tons of other channels have resources. Go out and take some practice exams and figure out which topics you're succeeding at and which ones you're consistently failing or taking a long time to solve those problems. You want to do this assessment early on. And the reason is you don't want to spend a ton of time studying topics that you're already good at and you don't need to put effort into, but the ones that you're particularly weak at and the ones that have a lot of problems. For example, static, structural, mechanics of materials, geotechnical. These subjects have 10 to 12, sometimes more problems on the exam. So we're talking, 10 to 15% of the material. You're going to want to spend most of your time studying those topics, especially if you're weak at those problems. Topics such as engineering economics, for example, have way less questions. And if you're not as strong in that topic, it probably won't hurt you that bad. But if you're weak on statics and structural engineering, it will come back to bite you and probably keep you from passing the test overall. So in those initial practice test segments, note which topics are you doing well at? What do you remember from your college classes? And which ones are you not remembering? And take notes of those things. So when you come back and create your study plan, you can figure out which ones you need to dump a lot of time and effort into and which ones you don't. Because the FE exam is about how quickly you can remember topics. It doesn't go ultra deep. Yes, you need to know some conceptual things. You need to understand those things. You need to pay attention in engineering class preferably, but really what it's testing you on is the system of problem solving and how are you able to find equations in the FE reference manual and apply them to engineering tasks. They're not really going to ask you to go super deep, but it will cover a lot of topics. So take some initial practice tests, figure out what you're strong, what you're weak at, write those down, and that'll help you when you move on to step 2. Step 2 is going to be creating a practice plan. For whatever amount of time you have until your test. It could be 2, 3, 4 months. For me, I basically spent a 3-month block studying for my FE civil exam. Why 3 months? It's a long enough time to give me time to cover enough topics, to go deep enough, to cover everything I wanted to cover, to make sure my mind was sort of milling on these things for enough time. So when I got to the test, I had been doing it for a while and I had a lot of the processes down cold, but not too long that when you spend 4+ months studying for exams, 6 months, for example, you start to get really exhausted. It's tough to stay motivated because the test date is so far away. I find a 3-month block is a really good amount of time, although it will vary by person. I found that under 3 months, unless you've got the material down cold or you're already in a study process, it's almost too quick to begin studying for the test. You have too much material to cover too quickly, and you're just going to do a poor job covering a lot of material instead of doing a good job and taking your time with each subject. So I created a study plan, which is similar to my 90-day study plan in the description, where I was mixing in a variety of the topics I needed to study every week while implementing small overviews throughout the week to make sure I was keeping up with everything. So each week I might have 1 or 2 main topics that I was really working on drilling, and then I have a day where I'd overview everything, making sure everything stayed fresh. I also had additional days where I would just study conceptual topics, additional days where I would take my time on the problems and think about the process, and then practice test days where I would really have that stopwatch going to make sure I was doing the problems in that 2 to 2.5 minute range, which is basically what's required on the FE exam. So create that study plan and stick to it. Do something you can be consistent with. I understand as an engineer, you might be working, you might be going to school, you might have family, you might be doing all 3. Okay, we don't have infinite time. I totally understand that. It's better if you stick to a half hour a day for 3 months than spending 7 hours on a weekend and not studying for 3 weeks at all. You need to stay consistent with what you can do. And as long as you're able to do that and keep it fresh in your mind day after day, that's really going to help improve your chances of studying. So don't blow off your study plan. Make it something consistent. If you can add more over time, excellent. If you need to bring it and reel it back in, that's fine. But pick something you can be consistent with. Make sure it has a nice variety of the topics, especially the ones you are weak at, and you'll be in pretty good shape come test day. And then thirdly, get familiar with the tools and test environment. Number one is going to be your calculator, okay? I have a video on my channel about calculators you can use on the FE exam, but you're gonna want to use that every single time you sit down and do practice problems. Use your calculator that you're going to use on the test. Don't use your smartphone. Don't use something else that is not legal or not allowed on the test. Use the one you're going to use on the test. Learn that calculator backwards and forwards. I remember I spent like a couple days just learning all my calculator options and yes, reading the manual to figure out what my calculator could do. Because it turns out it actually bailed me out on a few problems because I was able to do the operations in my calculator instead of on paper. So it can really come in handy. And nothing's worse than getting on a test and trying to figure out how to do a simple calculator function that you would know how to do on your smartphone, and that's the reason why you miss a problem. So get familiar with your calculator, get quick with it, and get quick with the FE reference manual. That thing should be open every time you do a practice problem. And when I do practice problems on my channel, I always have the segment from the FE reference manual right there. Don't use other resources. Don't just try and wing it. Have that thing on your screen, and particularly digitally. Because the test is taken digitally, have it digitally open. Get used to searching for the terms, okay? I remember when I took the FE civil exam, I had like the manual where things were on the page memorized. So when I searched for something, I knew exactly where it was. I knew where the thing was on the page. So you want to learn that thing very, very intimately, get very, very familiar with the FE reference exam, and then preferably when you study, have some sort of a time limit to help simulate the test taking conditions. Try and do multiple problems at once without breaks in that time constraint, because it can be easy to say if you spend 4 or 5 minutes on a problem to get the FE problems, that's a lot of time to do them. But when you start to condense that time and you add in test taking nerves, all the other things that are going on in your mind, you got up early, your schedule is off, okay? You want to simulate the test taking environment as close as possible so that when you finally go into taking the test, you're used to the speed, you're used to using the manual, you're used to using the calculator, and you're used to the process, and you're able to just bang that sucker out and get it done when you finally get to test day. So those are my 3 tips to passing the FE exam. Very practical, very straightforward. You can check out my free guides in the description down below. And if you'd like to work with me directly to create a plan for you to pass the FE exam in the next 3 months, you can contact me down below at my email, and I would be happy to help you out. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.